engine
wear
life
cycle. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Roger, what's your airplane do?
Magic.
Nice. I like that.
So, I mean, there's
Them.
obviously we don't have dispatch or anything, so we don't have numbers that are calculated for us. However, the airplanes, I'd have to go back for the older ones, but the ones that fly now, they do everything for you. Specifically, when we're talking about the 7X, much like you guys, we have an entire flight management system, and it asks for all kinds of information. And then once that's all plugged in, it will allow you to compute it, and it populates everything for you. It'll calculate your N1 for takeoff settings, basically giving you the minimum amount of thrust you need in order to meet performance specifications. I'm not going to lie, what exactly the different modes are, I don't even remember I don't remember forgetting it. I'm not sure that was something that we actually ever covered. You plug this into the computer. I mean, we basically have a mouse. We fly the airplane with a mouse and a joystick, and we plug everything in. It spits it out, and we have a detent. And actually, the 7X actually is all the way forward. There isn't an extra, engine failure. Because it will actually kick you into the higher. If in case you had an engine failure, it'll kick into the higher thrust rating for you. Right. So you just push the thrust levers all the way forward, and you let it do its thing. And
so it sounds like you have like a electronic version of the QRH, not the QRH, performance. We call it QRH in our
performance
FMC.
manual or
everything.
Version,
we have the entire performance is loaded on all those parameters are loaded within the computers.
And then that spits out your thrust ratings and V speeds and flap settings,
and it populates it for you on both pilots' PFDs. Yeah. And and this was kind of one of Dassault's things, was to make it as pilot friendly as possible, which is good. And you could spend an entire episode, arguing on how it's bad also, but yeah, we push those thrust levers all the way forward. And then when we get up to, you guys were talking about, acceleration height or takeoff safety altitude or different, ways of saying the same thing.
Third segment climb. Fourth. I forgot all that. Just kidding.
So once you basically get to your fourth segment, after your fourth segment climb, you can put it in, and you go into any other mode other than takeoff. It will take you out of takeoff mode and put you into climb mode, depending on exactly what you've selected. But everything's very automated.
Nice.
We plug it in, it spits it back out. We have all the V speeds populated on the PFD right there for us, as well as the N1 bug and number, which then is part of power set. That's supposed to be one of those things you verify.
Yeah,
cool.
It really is a testament to how far we've come, because even back in our regional days, all three of us have flown the Embraer 145, and it was the same thing there. The FADEC would calculate, as long as you were, if you were in the reduced, the Alt-TO 1 takeoff or Alt-TO reduced setting for takeoff, if the FADEC calculated, I don't know how many milliseconds difference between the two engines, that would indicate that you had an engine failure, the FADEC would automatically put you in TO or TO reserve or whatever, whatever aircraft you were flying, which model FADEC you had. So the aircraft did, like Roger's aircraft is doing, that he's currently flying, an aircraft did everything for you. But as a kind of memory item, we were always trained, even though you were in the reduced power setting detent, you always push it forward. Even though you technically didn't have to do that, because the FADEC should do it for you. On the Airbus, at least at Legacy Airlines, they've taught us a couple things with the go-around procedures. On a normal go-around, not a single engine, but a normal go-around, if you go into go-around, what triggers not only the navigation system, but also the engine parameters, the climb settings with auto thrust and whatnot, is you push it into the TOGA detent, the takeoff and go-around detent. Then the navigation will automatically segment everything into the missed approach procedure that you have programmed in the flight guidance computer. Also, you'll have your maximum thrust. Now, on the Airbus, they teach us that you can, at the option of the pilot or the captain or the pilot flying, however you want to divvy it up, you can do what they call a soft go-around. So you put it in the detent, that triggers the navigation, that triggers the max thrust and the profile for a go around. You run through your procedures, all right, go around toga, go around flaps, positive rate, gear up, and so on and so forth. And then while that's happening, the pilot flying can go toga and then immediately back to the climb detent. That way, the engine's not at 100 or more percent N1 for a very long period of time, because if you're in the air, you haven't touched down, and terrain's not an issue, weather's not an issue, performance of the engines are not an issue, why not perform a soft go around? So there are techniques that we're using. I don't know, is it the same on the 7.3 that you do a soft go around technique?
So we have a very similar operation. Yeah, when we select go around on the toga buttons, one click will give us the soft go around mode. In other words, just a regular go around thrust setting, and it'll also sequence into our missed approach. And if we do have an engine failure, it'll bring up the engine failure procedure on the navigation, which you actually have to activate. So that's kind of nice. And if you click the go around buttons twice, it'll give you max go around. So if you're in one of those high altitude airports, you'll get your max thrust there. So
so your go around buttons are actually on your thrust lever quadrant on the sides, correct?
Correct. Yeah.
So when you do a go around,
it's actually in the front.
In the front.
Yep.
Okay.
Hold on, let me make sure. Yeah, it's in front of the throttle quadrant. Getting a little dyslexic learning here from all the other airplanes, but yeah, it's in the front of the throttle quadrant. So right in front of the actual knobs on top of the throttle, in front, they're in front. So you can press either one, and they both work the same way. I was thinking the auto throttle disconnects are on the sides.
On the sides, okay.
Yeah.
The Airbus that we have auto throttle disconnect on the sides.
On the sides, yeah.
We don't have a button in the front.
Right, but on the 145, they're on the sides, right? So there was a lot of negative transfer learning there at one time. So go around, click, and the throttle would kick off, and you're like pulling back, nothing's happening, speed's bleeding off. You're like, why is this thing not sequencing? Push the thing all the way forward, and then it come all, nothing would happen. You're like,
I don't know of anyone that is transitioning from either GA to a turboprop or a jet on a regional, or anyone also going from a regional environment into a legacy environment or a major airline environment with either a heavy aircraft or a narrow body aircraft that doesn't have a few months of those kind of anxiety-ridden dreams where they can hear all of the alarms and bells and whistles on that new aircraft that they're running up. Pull up, terrain, terrain, traffic.
I think I shared it with you guys a couple segments ago, and since we're already talking about it, it's kind of funny just to bring it back up. So when I was the check airman on the 175, I had a student that flew legacies in corporate. So it's basically the 145, toga buttons on the throttles were, on the side. Mm-hmm. Well, on the 175, that is the auto throttle disconnect. And the go around buttons are actually behind the thrust levers. So if you want to go around, you just hit the little button behind it, and the thrust levers auto throttle would go up. Well, we actually had I was training the student, and or they were my student, IOE student. They were already been trained. But anyway, we had a go around scenario, and so we made the call out. All right, let's go around. All right, go around. Well, instead of selecting the go around buttons, they selected the auto throttle disconnects. So, the throttles stayed right where they were, and there was yelling, throttle, throttle, throttle. And I looked over, I'm like, I'm getting ready. I just wanted to see what would happen. Let's see if they can recover. It's not my aircraft yet. We haven't lost much airspeed, but they're pitching for, 10 degrees, and now I start to see the airspeed bleed off. I'm like, all right, hey man, you got to hit the go around buttons, and right now, they're shell shocked. They're like, what's going on? Why isn't this thing not doing anything? And then I'm like, all right, my aircraft. So then I just shove it full forward, hit the go around buttons. And then I didn't hit the throttle buttons yet because I wanted them to, audibly and acknowledge what that, warning was, that audible warning was, so that they
Yeah.
could learn from it. And I'll just let it go, throttle. I'm like, you hear that? And he's like, yeah, throttle. And he's like, oh, did I just hit the throttle disconnect? Yes, you did. That's why nothing happened. And he's like, oh, damn it.
A classic example of the law of primacy, ladies and gentlemen.
Exactly.
So the law of primacy states that what you learn first will be the go-to reaction muscle memory that you will enable under a stressful workload, because that's the first thing that you've learned. And when you transition from one aircraft to another, one checklist to another, you'll find yourself, when you're tired, when you're under a tremendous amount of stress, which us aviators are immune to, right? Then you will go to the first thing you learned, the law of primacy. That's why you don't have to be perfect from the get-go, but it's always important to get those good habits, get those positive learning right away at the beginning. Learn it right the first time, because even though you can adjust and learn the procedure later on down the road, which to a certain degree is a normal way of learning, but you are always going to go to that law of primacy subconsciously in a subliminal way. And that's exactly what you're describing, is that your student on IOE, which was coming out to the line, who had already been typed in the aircraft, had positively shown that they could, navigate the aircraft. How many go-arounds do you do in the simulator? I mean, come on. But in the real life environment, you got millions of more of data points that are coming at you of what's going on in your environment. So the stress level is much higher in real life than in the simulator. And that law of primacy kicked in from the previous aircraft that they flew. So that's a great story and a great example. So thank you.
So that's my WTF story, by the way, for the end of the show.
WTF, yes. So